Eh bien, rebonjour à toutes et à tous, et puis je salue évidemment celles et
Hello again. Welcome to those that have joined us for this last session of the day on European policy for the implementation of the unified framework for the ID wallet. Let me welcome our guests. Please and join me. We have Anthony, Eric. Thank you for accepting this invitation. We're going to talk about the implementation of the European regulation, which is now entering its final phase. We have a session in French and English, so whether you need to hear either French or English, you can get a headset outside the room.
So if you need a translation, you can just pick up devices at the entrance of the room. À mes côtés, Norbert Sackstetter, merci.
I have with me Norbert Sackstetter from the European Commission. It's always a pleasure to welcome you in Lille for the ID Forum. You're the head of unit for the DG Connect of the European Commission. We also have Anthony Carmois, the coordinator for France Titre. We have the great pleasure of welcoming Katarzyna Prusa-Gorniak, the permanent representative, head of digital affairs, representative of the Republic of Poland. And we also have Eric Van Suren. Thank you for joining us. You topic leader e-identity for Solvay.edu. Florent Tournois was meant to be with us from France Titre, but unfortunately he couldn't be with us. He had to leave for Paris at the last minute following our discussions this morning, but Anthony can maybe share some information regarding France Titre. So let's start with the implementation of the European regulation with the delegated actions. Norbert, you have the floor first.
Thank you very much. Hello to everybody. It was a great pleasure to be with you once again here in Lille. Lovely city, lovely town. And that's it. You can hear me?
So I will continue maybe in English because it's easier for me and maybe it's even easier for you or for some of you. So I'm very happy to be with you here. I think since I have been here last time, I think we have made quite substantial progress. You know that the regulation has entered into force, the European Digital Identity Regulation, in May last year. We have done quite a bit of work on implementing acts so far, and now I must say I don't have the exact figure in here, but I think it's over 40 empowerments we have, so 40 empowerments in the regulation, more than that for implementing acts. We are quite advanced in this. We have adopted, as I think most of you will know, a first series of implementing acts on the 21st of November last year. These are, in our view, the most important implementing acts as they describe the architecture of the wallet, the requirements of the wallet, but also the security architecture of the wallet, the certification requirements. All this has been adopted by member states on the 21st of November, and it has satisfied the requirement of the regulation that within those 2 years, so let's say theoretically by the 20th of November 2026, all 27 member states in the European Union have to offer all their citizens and residents a European digital identity wallet. Now, I'm saying this because we all still, after all these years working on this project, we feel it's an absolute incredible achievement, which allows us to put a means of identification which is not provided by the big platforms on the table of each and every one, which is fully secure, which secures our personal data, and which presents an alternative to commercial solutions. So it's not financed by data, it's financed by our own will that we want to engage with this wallet. And we are creating a framework which does not only allow us to identify where we want and also refuse identification when we don't want to be identified. It also allows us to share data like mobile driving licenses, like health certificates, e-prescriptions, and a lot of this we will hear today, I think, because we are testing this data. It's very much a future project. Some of this data does exist already, other is being developed, so it's a platform for the future that we are creating today. And I still would like to say as well that we are at the forefront globally. There is no other project at the level of identity, at level of assurance high, so at a high degree of security that works in the same way that we do. I mean, we work a lot with India lately with the Aadhaar project, and we feel it's absolutely fascinating what they do, because in terms of scale, it's obviously something that passes beyond Europe a lot, but they have a different appreciation of security and of data protection, which is, I think, a decision that they have taken. But, we are not badly placed on the global scale, and the interests of other world regions, of almost all world regions, and in particular also of the private sector and of platforms in this wallet, I think, is also a sense of confirmation of this situation. So really something where I think we all have to congratulate ourselves that we are there, but the next 2 years, and I think the implementing acts show this, is a huge challenge for us to, and in particular also for member states, to get these wallets on the ground. We have, as I told you, adopted a first set. We are now in, as we call it, the second series, the second batch. This regulates relying party registration, identity matching, which is a crucial element to be sure. It sets up a technical system that you can be sure, and member states can be sure, that the person who claims to be the person is actually the real person. So there needs to be a technical process of matching identities, which is not very easy. And we have a number of other implementing acts in the second batch, and then we will have a third and a fourth batch that completes the series of implementing acts in the coming weeks and months that set up a completely new system of trust services, a trust service framework system, and those will be adopted between, we hope, May and June this year. So the next series of implementing acts, we have an appointment next Wednesday in Brussels in comitology. We hope that most of these implementing acts on the second batch can be adopted by member states on the 9th of April. That's on the agenda of comitology, and then we will go into a next series. So we will complete our work in time. So thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup. Thank you, Norbert. Eric, peut-être
Eric, Anthony, you too, perhaps some words on so we can understand about some of the compromises they made to make in terms of ergonomic user design, in terms of safety, security, interoperability, of course. What's been decided so far? What's not yet been decided? Thanks, Melanie. And of course, Florent sends his apologies for not being there. I'm going to do my best to represent the public perspective, France Titre, which is pretty stressful for me. For ADES, I'm not going to go into all the detail about all the compromises that have been made between user experience and security. I think you're all aware of that kind of thing, but perhaps I could talk a little bit more from our perspective, the difference between DDAS1, DDAS2. What we're bringing with the wallet is a new, compulsory for EU member states system, which is considered by definition to be interoperable between member states. That's a radically new paradigm. France was actually dragging a little bit behind in terms of meeting towards it, but here we are now. We have an obligation to achieve interoperability in a relatively short time frame. Eric, you'd perhaps like to add something to that? I'd say from my point of view, as someone who has spent a long time in the security sector and spent a lot of time trying to get around security, I'd say there's good news here and there's less good news. It's an innovation, a huge innovation, in fact.
High assurance.
There's this high assurance level for a digital wallet. That we know how to make these wallets. We know that technology out there. We know how much energy it takes to build this system as well and to keep it safe. not least for use for payment purposes. Now we're going further still. We're going to the next level. It raises an awful lot of questions regarding security. We need to look at user contacts, certain functionalities. I don't know, showing your mobile driver's license. Why not? Whatever. Showing your student card to get a discount. Not particularly risky, but there are other user scenarios which where it's highly likely that they're going to attract a lot of negative, creative attention from the part of malicious. So I'd say there are certain user situations where we're going to need technical standards and semantical standards that are already well known, like the mobile driver's license, for example. That's fine. That's been well analysed. That's a stable. There are other user scenarios which are not quite so clearly defined yet. This morning, somebody was talking about how interesting it was to work on the large-scale pilots. But even in these cases when there are a lot of partners involved, they still don't have full interoperability. So, I mean, let's just say that there's a dream here. There really is and the potential benefits are huge, but there's still a lot of work to be done in terms of stabilizing the standards, of achieving genuine cross-border interoperability. And if we're inventing new things, we need to rethink the security questions underpinning those things. Okay, Eric, and what kind of, you were referencing some user scenarios, some functions here, potential uses. Where do you think there may be, you mentioned creativity. I think you mean from malicious intentions. Where will security need to be reinforced? Well, I think there are quite a lot. I think we perhaps need to start with, let's start by tackling the low-risk things, because there are standards which are well-known, stable standards which have been well analysed, where there's not an awful lot of risk involved from relaying parties. But if I can steal your identity, what do you call that in French? So identity theft. Nobody in the room wants to have their identity stolen. You don't want to have your identity, yet someone operating under identity, going out, buying a car under your name, and sending you the bill. That kind of thing. It's not a nice experience. So protecting our identity is essential, and protecting your bank account, I think, is very important also. Thank you very much, Eric. Let's talk to you, Katerzyna. Let's talk about
already a program which is highly developed, like we are saying in Denmark. How far have you got in Poland? Could you share for us?
Good afternoon, and let me first thank you very much for the invitation, and also to tell you that Poland was the first one to have the wallet. Our wallet application, so-called mCitizen app, was launched on the 29th October 2017. So even before we started negotiating EUDI regulation, so I often say that maybe Norbert was inspired by the Polish solution when he was preparing the draft of the EUDI regulation that we later had the pleasure also to negotiate together, because I also sit in the council working party, when we're mostly in the cyber area, but as I like the topic of digital identity and trust services very much, I was also negotiating the EIDAS solution. So we have the wallet for a long time, and we have learned how useful it can be. We also came through the whole process, because at the beginning the digital identity within the wallet didn't have the same legal power as the plastic one that you have, but through time everybody understood that it has to be like this, and now whenever I'm in Poland I don't need to carry anything with me. I have my phone with the mCitizen app where I have my ID, my driving license, my documents for my car, and many other applications. And the team in Warsaw, they are all the time developing new use cases. And what is very important, the team is always working to make sure that all the solutions are user-friendly. And what we learned also during the process, it was important to find those use cases for which people would download and use the wallet. Because without the use cases, then you don't have the reasoning why you should convince people to download the wallet. Of course, security is very important, as it was also mentioned here. About the identity theft, I think it's one of the biggest concerns also when it comes, in the Polish team. So we are working very closely together with within the different groups that we have established through the IDES regulation to make sure that we sort this out. So in principle, we also are part of the large-scale projects, and there from the very beginning, together with the French colleagues, we were developing solutions there together. We have also passed the cross-border tests for the interoperability. I understand that it's not the 27 interoperability, but we have to start with something. So we believe that the large-scale project is a very good start to make sure that within the most advanced member states, we make sure that it works, and we are looking forward to make sure that it does in the whole EU, as it is prescribed in the IDES regulation. But for this, of course, we need standards, and I'm a lawyer, so fingers crossed for all the people developing the standards. Without the standards, we will not be able to make it.
You said that the wallet is very important for the single market and specifically for Poland. What are the impacts and the consequences? Why it's so important?
First of all, for cross-border use cases, because sitting in your home, you will be able to identify yourself and make sure that we are able to do the things that for normal, without the digital identity, you would have to go in person. So indeed, for the single digital market here, you would be able to do it in distance for different use cases. But as I said, that's the most important thing, to sort out those use cases and to make sure also at the national level that you have those e-services available, so you can use a wallet to fulfill those e-services.
Another key point that is about communication with the population, to give them all the information and to push them to use this wallet. How are you communicating? What are you saying to them to have this all population using the wallet?
I think the most important thing was that you don't have to carry with you the paper, the plastic, and your wallet. You have everything in your mobile phone. Currently, everybody has a phone with them, but you often might have forgotten the documents, so you don't have to carry them. You also have the information, for example, when it comes to my car, so I have also information when my insurance is ending, when should I do the technical check of the car. I have also information when is the date of the expiry of my documents, when I should apply, and there are different other functionalities in the wallet. E-prescription I have also there. So, and there, as I said, they are still building new use cases in the wallet to make sure that it's super user-friendly. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Katarzyna. Norbert, maybe one word about large-scale pilot projects that we were just saying before with Katarzyna. For the where are there for the wallet implementation and the breakdown by member state? Could you explain us this point?
Thank you, Melanie. Absolutely. So maybe just to confirm, Katarzyna, I mean, I fully agree. I mean, a wallet without use cases is not a wallet, so we need to work on use cases, and that's why we work with pilots. Pilots is, in a nutshell, member states and, well, public authorities and businesses. So there is a combination of, I think we have over 350 companies who work in these 4 existing pilots. We've got almost all member states except for one in the pilots, and this continues in the future. We have current pilots. We have 4 pilots. They work on things like payments, travel, education, social credentials, but also mobile driving licenses, identification, e-health, e-prescription. So there is a whole variety, a whole sort of full bag of different use cases that are relevant, I think, in our member states, and some more than in others, depending on, the national situation. But what I understand from these pilots, and I mean the colleagues know maybe better than I do, but what I see from these pilots is that an awful lot of progress has been made. So you have the proof that the wallet can work. We have the proof that the wallet can add the value, that the wallet actually exists. So we have developed within the pilots templates for the wallets. We've tested these large-scale pilots, and we have really very encouraging progress that come out of these pilots. We are going into a next series of pilots, and this is, I think, something which we'll probably speak about later. We have 2 more pilots that will come along, hopefully this summer, and they will run right into the deployment of the wallet in 2027. So these pilots will deliver the wallets that will be active on the ground, that will be issued to us. For me, it's a question also, if I can say that still, when we want to make sure that the wallet works, it's about simplicity and it's about security as well, If you have a mobile driving license, if you lose it, well, in some countries, the one I know best, it takes you about 3 weeks and you have to fill in quite a number of forms to get your driving license back. Now, a mobile driving license with a recovery that usually is built into the system, you can do this within, I'm not sure seconds, but at least minutes, or at least within the same day, So it's a completely different user experience, and it is important in particular for the young generation. I think most of us have kids, and when we see how kids relate to the public sector, to la mairie in France. Now, my daughter has a very sort of digital approach to the public sector, and the public sector doesn't respond to her in the way she would like the public sector to respond. So I think this digital gap that I perceive in the young generation, it's perceived in a triple or quadruple way. And if we don't fix it, there is a real democratic problem, I think. So this is a democratic project in my sense as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Norbert. Anthony, un mot sur ces grands projets.
Anthony, one word on those major pilot studies. What about the breakdown per member states? Yes, we are coordinating a LSP. Potential is a consortium with more than 150 partners looking at mobility, e-signature. What about the breakdown? We've entered the industrial scale for interoperability. We had a first meeting in Warsaw a few weeks ago where we proved in real time that locally as well as remotely, there was an exchange of information. The breakdown of member states is the following. Many member states have resources. France is one of them. We are lucky to have resources to work on the tech, to do proof of concept, to try standards that are not yet defined. And other member states are really relying on the referent implementation prescribed by the European Commission. This is the wealth of having so many stakeholders. They can use the reference of the Commission to carry out their own tests adapted to their national environment. For me, this is the difference between some European countries that have the resources and can move faster in terms of wallet technologies, whereas other countries are relying on the industrial sectors, the commercial sectors. There was a question in the room.
Okay, okay. Merci beaucoup.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Anthony, for that explanation. Perhaps now a few words, if you will, on interoperability with national identity systems, the integration with existing national platforms, service platforms. This is a subject which Eric's touched upon a little bit. Would you like to say a little bit more about that aspect?
Sur la partie
to the
national EID scheme.
The national EID schemes. Sorry, I'm reading all the implementing acts in English. I think the problem is more an organizational one, because the regulation clearly states that the national EID scheme, it remained, national governments retain ownership of their national schemes. In France, I understand you have to go to the town hall, I believe, to activate your wallet. In other countries, it'll be online. In other countries, there can be live plus added checks. I'm not quite sure how that's all going to be harmonized in the future, because in the current state of the regulation, it does clearly state that there are national EID schemes. So there are, of course, certain structural elements which are shared. Inter-device connections, that's more risky than just using the single device each time. So we need to resolve that issue also. I think the biggest problem for me is are we checking the identity of the people? Are we all checking to the name standards, to the degree of strictness? And it's different now. I mean, in the future, I think we'll still have these EID schemes. We're not going to throw out the window these national R solutions that have already been put in place, these national EID solutions. The challenge now is to harmonise that to a sufficient degree, and that's going to be an interesting exercise, an interesting challenge for the future, but we need to start somewhere. In identity terms, Norbert mentioned this already, there's another challenge we face, which is identity matching. I'm half Dutch, half Belgian. You know, I could launch my Belgian wallet. I could set myself up a Dutch wallet, and I've also got a degree from a French university. What am I going to do to get that? Because the systems are different in different countries, and each country has its own distinct way of working. Currently, in Belgium, it's the national registration number. In France, it's probably your social security number. In the Netherlands, it's the BSN number. How are we going to make all that line up and make sure that people aren't creating 2 or 3 different wallets and getting 2 or 3 subsidies or benefits or whatever? You know, you can be creative in that respect. It's important because it's identity is essential when you're exchanging in important user scenarios. The relaying parties also have a lot of questions to answer. And this has already been mentioned, but the user scenarios are more important there. That's really important. We need to look at the value that's being added for users. What is the potential for this to attract attention for malicious actors? And as I've already mentioned, there are certain usage scenarios which are already relatively mature. The mobile driver's license is the example I mentioned, or European health insurance card. Why not? This is pretty well-known systems. They're pretty well-known structures, not a lot of risk associated. But there are other areas where the protocols and the semantic standards are not yet sufficiently resilient because they're brand new. Thank you very much. Anthony, coming back to you now. What Eric's just said, how are you addressing this aspect of the problem with this proliferation of national systems? So you could have multiple identities, you could have multiple, if you studied in one country, live in another country. There are people who live in one country and work in another. You could live in France and work in Switzerland, for example. How are we going to tackle that issue? That issue? I mean, every member state is going to, it's going to depend if you've got a lot of cross-border workers. For Luxembourg, for example, the majority of people working in Luxembourg don't live in Luxembourg, and they're using the public services. They're going to have to, their answer is going to be very different from the French answer. To come back to your point about identity matching, Eric, it's not about using your social security number at every time, just because we don't have to, quite simply. But another reason, and I believe this was actually part of the debate that was held at the European Parliament, is the question is a unique, persistent number which remains the same over time. There is a risk associated with that in terms of the threat to people's privacy. There's clearly with cryptographic signature, liability, but having a parameter, a setting which is distinct, which is unique, maybe that's, I think, the most critically important thing here. And from what I understand currently for the EUDI, the idea now is to offer all member states individual solutions which can potentially tailor to their needs. They could issue, if necessary, complementary attestations which meant to secure those unique identifying numbers, unique user numbers identified with the public service. To give you a more concrete example, in France, when you use France Connect, you share your pivot identity, which is composed of 6 attributes. If you have someone has the same name as you, imagine someone who has exactly the same name as you, was born in the same place on the same day, has the same gender. France Connect's not going to work for you. That's a limitation of the French system, I'm afraid, and we're going to have to find a way around that. So an additional complementary attribute.
How can we deal with this kind of things?
Well, I think it's the exciting part of identity matching is that it is, well, it's, you know, it's part of the overall game, and the overall game is that we are living in a world where we call them legacy systems, where 27 legacy systems exist, they continue to exist, and we have to bring them in a harmonized, common system. Now, a classic European project, but when it goes about technology, it's not so easy. You cannot simply bulldoze what is there and convince member states to stop. They won't, and many cases also doesn't make sense. So you have to find a solution which considers what has been achieved at national level, but brings it at a European level in a sense that it works together and can talk to each other. Now, this sounds very theoretic, but in practice on identity matching, we have, as you said, Anthony, we had a proposal. So the Commission has made a very well-daring proposal. In 2021, we have suggested to introduce a unique identifier, which is an identifier that member states would have given to each and every one of us. And in fact, in I think 25 of 27 member states, this is already common practice. So this is not anything which is revolutionary, but this was one of the most debated issues in the whole legislative discussion, with the result that the Commission withdrew this part of the proposal. So we are now in a situation that we don't propose this anymore, and we can live with it, not as easy from a technological point of view as we would have lived with it with this identifier. But I can tell you what happens now is simply that we will work on the PIT data set. For those of you who know a bit the details of it, there is a PIT data set which includes your first name, your last name, your date of birth, your place of birth. There are a number of categories. And this is what is used as identity matching in the first place. And if this is not sufficient, which it will not be, in the case of people which have very similar names, similar birth dates, the authorities can use other means as necessary. This is the compromise that we suggest, more or less. I mean, I don't have it in front of me at the moment. And this is something that will work. But it will require a lot of constructive cooperation between member states. Let's put it like this, because we have a number of camps in the group. We have those who believe in identifiers, and we have those who don't believe in identifiers. Now, I think we have passed that stage of discussion. We just have to be very pragmatic, and finding pragmatic solutions, I think, is one of the main themes in this work, because if you go too much into ideology, you will not be able to drive this project in the timeline we have.
One word about certification. How is the wallet certification framework being set up?
Well, what we want is a European framework. This is what the legislator wants. So the legislator has asked us to introduce, to design, to develop a European certification framework following the CSA Act, so the Cyber Security Act. Now, those of you who know certification a bit better, you know that it is not easy to set up such a framework, so it takes a number of years. It will not work for 2026. So what we have introduced in the legislation, what the legislature has agreed, that member states will, in this intermediate period until there is a common European certification scheme, which is one single scheme to which all national wallets have to be certified. We will have national schemes, but these national schemes have to follow common criteria, common requirements, and will have to be, I will not say now peer reviewed, because that's legally not the case, but they will be discussed in the European Digital Identity Cooperation Group, and I can assure you, if a member state, whether it is France or Malta or Portugal, sees vulnerabilities, they will not stay silent. So this process of national schemes is what we have agreed in the intermediate period, still on the basis of harmonized rules, because the wallet is fundamentally a harmonized product. And we are now in the discussion with member states to make sure that this happens for the end of 26, which is a major challenge.
Eric, un mot sur les certifications?
Eric, a little word from you about certifications. Well, a couple of things spring to mind. First, I think it's clear that certification is linked to the wallet, of course, but let's not forget that the use means that the use of that wallet means that the whole system, really, as a whole, needs to be properly secured. So any bit providers they're putting these bits in the wallet, you know, the way that happens, the actual mechanics of that needs to be correct, needs to be verified. Otherwise, the technology, the product, if you like, a product may be secure, but if the way in which we use the wallet is not sufficiently secure, there's a problem there. The relaying parties, when they receive something, you don't just make a wallet for the sake of having a wallet. It's there to be used. It's there for the purpose of exchanging, sharing data, for identifying, authenticating, exchanging attestations. It's only worth anything, it's only useful if relaying parties trust it. So again, the wallet, the product, the wallet provider needs to have a high level of security, and also the trust framework around all that, the supervision of the bit providers, the supervision of the qualified attestation providers, that needs to achieve a significant and sufficient level of security. Otherwise, the wallet won't be any use. The second point is that the regulation clearly states at the moment that you need certification of each wallet. It needs to have it certified in terms of its functions. So function, I think that's covered by Article 5A, but it also needs to be cross-border. It needs to work across borders. Otherwise, the whole purpose of this regulation is to make a cross-border solution. You also need a cybersecurity certification. That falls under the aegis of the Cybersecurity Act. It also needs to be GDPR compliant. There are certain differences of interpretation between different countries on what is or is not GDPR compliant. You also need to have certification for integration, if I can put it this way, with integration compatibility with the national EID scheme. So all of those elements need to be functional. We need functional security, GDPR, compatibility with national EID schemes, all those different facets which need to be properly handled. And technically speaking, the solution and the interactions need to be secured, but all actors need to be a sufficient level of professionalism. They need to, I'm talking about really with NS2 directives, they are essential entities. I would say that there are more essential entities. If you see what's being done in Poland, if you forget your ID card, your mobile driver's license, etc., and that's all you have to fall back on, is, and a charger. Otherwise, if you run out of battery, you're going to be in trouble. If this doesn't work, you're in trouble.
Essential entity.
So I think it's an essential entity, which is going to be delivering wallets to students. So with all the NS2 requirements that go along with that, this is my personal opinion, I think all those requirements are applicable.
Something about what we were just discussing before about identity matching, about certification.
Just to say that identity matching is a very important thing to solve. And of course, it's very nice that we will come up with a solution and a nice wording in an implementing act, because we have to come up with a nice wording, but then we have to find a solution, workable solution at the technical level. And I'm sure that it can be done, but it is complicated, because we differ in 27, we differ when it comes to how are we identifying people at the national level. In Poland, we have a national number, a unique persistent identifier. So everyone in the EU, and I will be using my number that was given to me by the Republic of Poland, you can say that it's me. But it's not always in all member states. But we had those discussions already, that there are some solutions, but they are quite complicated. But indeed, this is something that must be solved, because, for example, in my case, now I live in Belgium. I have my medical records in Belgium. If I move back to Poland, I would like to access those medical records. If the Belgian authorities will not be able to identify me, then that may be an issue. But now I realize that I have also a Belgian number. So these things, you have to sort it out, but it's limited basket of use cases that you have to sort it out. And I'm sure that the best minds, let's say, from the technical side, are working to find this solution.
Thank you, Katarzyna. Anthony, un mot sur, vous l'avez souligné.
Anthony, a word on something that you mentioned this morning, mentioned by Madam Prefect Anne-Gaëlle Baudouin on the playground given by the ANTS. What are we talking about, and what kind of usage? Yes, Madam Prefect this morning talked about the playground, reminding the history. The agency ANTS was seized by the industrial sector a while back, saying that they wanted to participate within the NSP. This is what really motivated us in grouping French industrials that are really part of the ecosystem, and we see it in the room. The playground is something available for the whole French and European ecosystem to host solutions that we can then make available in the ecosystem, and it can be then used in a kind of sand bag solutions. Capeso, EN Group have contributed, and we're looking for prospects. Clearly, we need to open endpoints on the internet. It's a simulator or a test station emission or a wallet stimulation, and then it is for you to either test for yourself or contribute so that you can have access to all the partners we have on Playground. So it's an experiment. If you're interested, come and see me. This is one of the reasons I've come here, to get in touch with future prospects. It's something that we want to get the industrial sector on board. We think that the creation of user cases will go hand in hand with the possibilities for the parties to embark the tech necessary to talk with the wallet. Banks, for example, will have to adopt certain bricks, and we need to really have partnerships between private and public to make sure that it's all fitting together, that it's going to work, to leave room. And that's just a word on signature, because the regulation calls for wallet providers to make the qualified signature possible, qualified free signature for professional cases. From us, the agency, we're going to facilitate the signature with a certified provider. We're not going to position ourselves, NTS, as a signature provider, but we're going to let the ecosystem, a very rich ecosystem with many actors, to let them exist and maybe rely on us just to identify users. Now, I know it's not exactly the core of your work within the ANTS. It was Florent, but can you maybe tell us a few words about the business models, the economic models? There was a question this morning to which we didn't really get an answer because we waited for this afternoon session. What can you tell us on that, Anthony? Can you be the spokesperson for Florent, who had to leave? Yes, he left just in time, so I'm left with the elephant in the room. Economic model. I've heard one or two things over the afternoon. Who's going to pay? The consumer, the user? How are we going to go about the euro distribution? For me, we really have to work along the lines of the trust model. Those that are in the trust model will either end up paying or be paid. That's one way to look at it. It's an idea that we're exploring. Nothing has been decided, and it's not something that we've put in the economic model of our agency. But the user, the consumer, may have to pay for a number of attributes in the wallet. Once payment is made, the user will use the attributes for a line party, a relaying party, and upon validation, the relaying party may not compensate the payment made by the user, but say you get a discount, or you get a compensation fee that takes the form of a discount as an incentive for the partner to do the same and to end up reimbursing the price. there's an economic model that we have to explore. Nothing has been finalized. I think that the stakes are different in the different member states. I know some member states, for example, Italy, they have a very strong economic model with a large number of ID suppliers, service providers. In France, I think we're still witnessing the infancy of the topic. So now is the time to lay the foundations. Eric, on this public-private partnership, it's of course something that is put forward, and you did talk about it, about this collective hybrid approach. Is it something that is making headway in the different member states? What do you see in your work? There are many large-scale pilot studies in Europe. We also have pilot studies that are national studies, but I would say that the value added is really to be discussed sector by sector. There are many user cases, several attestations that have to be shared. For healthcare, for example, we have to talk about the European health card. The European health card is easy to put in the wallet. The European student card also exists. The driving license, I don't know what's the point of having the driving license from an economic point of view, but maybe if you travel abroad and you want to rent a car, and you want to check that you can indeed rent a car as soon as you get to Spain for your holiday, for example. So I think it's really per sector that the definition has to be made. Some sectors are very mature. DG Employment, for example, at the European level, they have 900 structured electronic documents. 900. It's a blueprint that was decided upon 10 years ago, but transitioning from an old format is quite easy. For degrees, we have it for mobile driving licenses, but there are situations that are more difficult. For example, the traveling credentials, everybody talks about it, but we don't have the standards in the implementing acts, and the standards are not European. The standards are global for the traveling regulations. It's yet another challenge in the world of payment. We did talk about it on several occasions today. I wonder what is the opinion of the DG FESMA and the European Banking Authority. How far do we want to go? At one point, we may have to say, for some documents, we're going to use the European wallets, and for others, we won't. For example, banks want to have fraud detection engines to keep your bank account safe. So if you adopt a risk-based approach, which is what banks do, they can observe what's happening on your account. For example, they will see you're making a transaction for X euros, and then you have another transaction coming from Russia using an Android phone. Maybe this is not you, so it has to be detected. How will that work seamlessly with controls when you board a plane to go abroad? I don't think that KLM Air France is going to throw their own wallet to the bin because there's a new wallet on the market. We will have coexisting wallets per sector. There are user cases in potential in EWC that have been tested. Let's look at the use cases that are most mature. For everything that is not yet mature, maybe we should be cautious and wait. And just to finish on that, for me, that's my personal opinion, we're looking at a platform with a wallet, a platform where you can sign, exchange attestation, but if you apply it in a given sector, you have to abide by the rules pertaining to the sector.
Would you like to share what is done or what should be done in Poland?
As you know, we are also holding the presidency of the European Council, and also within one of our priorities is focused on simplification and burden reduction. And here we also see a very good potential for the wallet in this respect. And we very much support also the idea that was presented by the European Commission of the business wallet. And together with the Commission, now we are working on a concept for a workshop on the margins of the Digital Summit. And hereby I warmly invite you to come on 16, 17, 18 of June to Gdańsk, where the Digital Summit will take place. And before, on the 16th, and workshop dedicated fully to the business wallet concept. And there we want to discuss together from the stakeholders from the private sector, from different stakeholders, especially SMEs, and also trust service providers, exactly what could be the use cases for the business wallet, how can we use the business wallet in order to simplify and lessen of the administrative burden for SMEs, to find those good sites, to find those use cases together during this workshop.
Eric, je vous en prie.
And one phrase I would like to add, lower the risk, because in business you have a lot of risk, but if you can transfer information, attestations cross-border, of which you can be more certain that they are correct, the chances that you can interact with that party cross-border are much better, and your business risk, your potential losses are much lower.
Est-ce que vous vouliez réagir, Norbert, peut-être aux différents éléments qu'on a évoqués?
Norbert, did you want to react to the last points made by Eric and Katarzyna? Maybe on the business model?
Regulation that have not been harmonized, I think for good reasons, because we are facing very different situations at national level, and it is not something that we felt shall be harmonized and can be harmonized. At the same time, we strongly believe, this wallet is something that the public and the private should do together. The trust comes from the government. This is when you ask people, this is what they trust most still in most member states, but the use comes very often from the private sector. So it's a combination of trust and user orientation, client orientation that we need for the wallet, because it's an everyday system, and only like this we will be able to change, and to have the change, also the strategic change that we want in the market, that we combine trust and user orientation, so a combination of the public and the private sector. Now, when we look around across member states, I have a feeling that this message has been taken, it has been understood. There are very many member states who reflect in this direction, who have asked the private sector to issue a wallet, or cooperate very closely with the private sector in issuing a wallet. I think it's probably almost everybody, if I'm not mistaken. And it makes a lot of sense, and it gives us this combination of trust and user orientation that I think the wallet will need.
Anthony, peut-être un dernier mot, une dernière question.
Anthony, maybe one last point, and then we will turn to the audience. One word on the novelties for the months to come. Yes, we're taking over the coordination of a new LSP called Aptitude, with user cases described this morning. We will going to test them. Now, by rule, we don't quite know where we're going. There are several examples of texts that are currently being studied, presenting different visions or perspectives. There are different types of TTC credentials, type 1, type 2, type 3. Are we looking at a scan or a pure document or something that is issued without the passport? So there are several possible situations, also several situations around payment. How do you validate a payment when you have strong authentication, student's card, ticketing? One of the major differences in the consortium attitude compared to potential, we enter a more mature ecosystem. We have a rule in place, regulations. A lot of standards have moved forward since the beginning of potential. Potential actually was launched 2 years ago to the date. So now with Aptitude, we're going to very closely get to the deadline, which is member states having an obligation to make a wallet available. So we're looking at pre-production, production in the real world for this compulsory wallet. This is what I was meaning to say.
For the audience, avez-vous des questions à poser? Alors, monsieur, on va vous donner le micro. C'est pas que je voulais pas prendre.
So it's not that I didn't want to take your question, it's just that we had a Q&A time at the end of the presentation. I think you have a couple of questions for our guests.
Yeah, hello, Stefan Engberg. We're working on identity management for the defense and also planning to do a dual-use transfer to civil society from there. I have a comment and a request. First of all, I think that the wallet as is probably going to be the biggest EU failure ever. And listening to the panel here, I'm getting even more concerned because I think we're cherry-picking good things but ignoring all the bad things of what's going on. First of all, interoperability is not a good thing if we enforce bad structures. Then it turns into technology debt, it turns into bureaucracy, it turns into insecurity, it turns into failure to innovate because we cannot change it. There's no building mechanism to change, to adapt, to evolve in this structure. And I think the biggest problem is that the technical implementation of the wallet is non-compliant with the regulation. Okay, the regulation it's a complex field, okay? Let's agree to that, we all know that. But the regulation at least tried to balance and make GDPR, anti-crime, market requirements aligned with the need to have assertions that we can prove at court, so we can trust it for contracts, etc. But that's not what's been implemented. What has been implemented is 99% illegal surveillance. I mean, this is, if Putin ever invades Poland, I mean, he can just take this wallet and use that to control the population. Game over. There's nothing in here that supports the basic European values, such as GDPR. And I really think we need to think about that now, because we are speeding a process that's going to fail. That's one thing. To my suggestion, I think what we are missing here is that we have spent the last 15, 20 years over-bureaucratizing, over-digitizing in a big tech manner. Okay, in Europe, we pushed 5G for mobile phones. What does 5G do? It kills soldiers in Ukraine because it turns into a targeting system. It feeds children to Google because there's no security. Okay, so what we are forgetting here is that the way we do digital design is actually designing society. And we need to ask these questions now. In the military, they do not like tracing because that kills you. And IDAS actually dealt with that because it built in the last minute, it changed this systemic surveillance structure with a persistent identifier and instead required unlinkability. Okay? The issue of qualified unlinkability is really what this is about, because that is a way we can align GDPR, so citizens can share data without losing control. We can also build in the cryptographic requirements to do anti-crime enforcement. And at the same time, we can ensure that the markets work. My question, my suggestion to Norbert is to go back, and you need to change the PID definition. We need to have qualified unlinkable PID documents so that we can have root documents, and we can also create derivative documents as a root anchor for identity. We cannot solve that in this lip service to zero knowledge proofs, etc., which is just words without content, because that's not what's being implemented. We need qualified unlinkable transactions.
Thank you for your suggestion and question. Norbert.
I can certainly react briefly. I mean, I think this is your point point of view, and I think we all, I recognize your point of view and I take it as such. Maybe just to give you a couple of elements from my understanding. Now, the wallet certainly is fully under the GDPR regulation. And the GDPR regulation applies to all elements of the wallet, and it is one of those projects, of those European projects, in my view, that have been most transparent in this area. So everything is on GitHub, everything is open source, and you can comment on anything that we do, be it the reference implementation, be it the architecture and reference framework, the standards that are being used, the protocols, the different technical specifications or standards. So all this is open source. I can tell you from the negotiations that the issue of surveillance, tracking and tracing of people has been one of the big issues in the negotiations. So it's not an anodyne issue, it is an issue in the negotiations, and we have spent a lot of time together with the colleagues from Parliament and Council to create the necessary assurances, legally and technical, that this cannot happen. Just to give you one example, what we intend to do, and we are working on this together with a group of cryptographers, is to integrate so-called zero-knowledge proofs into the wallet. That's one of these technical possibilities that allow you to certify something at the same time your identity and other things that you do not want to certify stay entirely anonymous, like, for instance, age or the gender or something like this. So this is one part of the work that we've done in this sense.
Merci. Norbert, est-ce que quelqu'un veut ajouter?
Thank you, Norbert. Does anybody have anything else to add on that in response to the gentleman's remark? Eric, you wanted to add something?
Article 5C certification, there is an implementing act which has a complete risk register of risks we want to avoid. Those will need to be validated, that our implementation that is built really mitigates the risks which are in there. And some of them relate to that topic. The other element, you mentioned rushing. Yeah, I think we are trying to build an innovative plane that is multifunctional and do a lot of things. I hope we will build a solid Airbus and not a quick Boeing 737 MAX, which quickly goes into production. There, I think it's important that we choose use cases and standards which are sufficiently stable, where we know that these risks which are in the risk registry are sufficiently mitigated. So I don't think it's a simple exercise, let's be clear on that, and there is a delicate balance, and there have been quite some negotiations, but I do think this risk register takes into account a lot of risks that need to be mitigated. How they will be translated finally in the final standards, in the final architecture, etc., that is something that we will learn in the coming, 18 months?
Thank you, Eric. Nous avons alors une question au fond.
Yeah, Eric, we have another question at the back, and then I have seen you, so don't worry, I will get the microphone to you. Yes, Natalie, to you.
Hello. In fact, you have already published the 2 first parts for implementing ads. We are waiting now for a third one that will be published at the end of May, around the 21st of May. But before, we are all waiting for the public consultation of the third part. It was initially scheduled at around mid of March. We are the 1st of April. Can you say or tell us when will be published the consultation for this third part that integrate also some key criteria for the European Digital Identity Wallet and related trust services?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, the way our system works is that, and I have to say that we are a bit delayed, and the reason is simply that there's a lot of work on the table and it's not been possible to take it off the table as quickly as we would have wanted. So what usually happens is once we put the documents to comitology, that is, we send them to member states, we also launch the public consultation, because I think it wouldn't be fair to share it with the public before we share it with our constituency, with the member states, so we do it at the same time. And this should happen, I hope, in the next couple of weeks, hopefully before Easter. So the moment this goes into comitology, which means that it is transmitted for discussion, for scrutiny by member states, then you have a number of meetings and a number of discussions, we transmit it to the public, we publish it, and there is usually a 1 month public consultation period, and the results of the public consultation is brought by the Commission and certainly also by Member States into the discussions of comitology, so the documents are adjusted to the feedback of the public consultations. I hope that this will be able to do before Easter still.
Thank you very much. Nous avons une autre question. Oui, vous avez le micro.
Thank you. You have another question? You have the microphone? We enter.
On what you just said, the criticism regarding interoperability. Well, in fact, there's a French expression that says, "Il faut pas peindre le diable sur le mur." You should not paint
Don't paint it on the wall.
walls just to make everybody afraid of it. We have payment systems that are interoperable, that are magnificent, and it works perfectly. So the same criticism that you made regarding EIDs and interoperability of EIDs, you can also say the same about payment systems. MasterCard, Visa, they are international, they are interoperable, and they are fantastic. We use them every day, right? Now, digital identities, we have even much better mechanisms than payment systems. As it was said, we have zero-knowledge proofs, we have unlinkability, we have fantastic privacy features that we can build upon. This. Well, let's go step by step. You know,
sir,
payment systems,
if
they
you
were on
have,
paper.
do you have a questions, or maybe
No,
you
it was
can
just a
push the
comment.
discussion just after? Do you have a question or not?
No, it was just
Okay,
a comment.
thank you so much. Thank you very much. It's the end of the session. Merci beaucoup, messieurs, d'avoir été avec nous.
Very much.
Thank you so much to being in France. And Norbert, it was really a pleasure to have you also today with us. Avant de clore cette session, peut-être un mot.
Before concluding the session, perhaps a few words from Guy de Velcourt, who is the organizer, the champion of these days, who's done a lot of work behind the scenes over the weeks and months to make it possible for us all to be this game. Guy, over to you. Merci. Thank you, thank you. Yeah, of course, I won't be long, I promise. I'd just like to thank, well, firstly, to thank all of you who've been with us throughout this day. To thank you. I'd like to thank also all of our speakers, particularly those who've made an effort to be here, the European Commission, representative of the Polish government, our representatives from France Titre, NCT, who've been here all day. I'd like to thank all the moderators, Melanie Bernard-Rosa, Sebastian Ferreri, Nathalie Launay, Eric Leven also. I'd also like to thank our sponsors who've made this day possible, DocuPost, CERT Europe, InfoCert, KitMe, and BeConnect. Thank you very much. Thank you for being with us. I'll see you again next year for another session on digital identity. Thank you and good evening.